So yeah, the Boston Celtics were eliminated from the playoffs, but there are a few moves that I think they should make in order to fix this. So, yeah, let's go over them. So, some of the problems that the Boston Celtics have are they don't have a very good bench, and they don't have an inside presence or a good defender at the center position. So, yeah, here are some trades that the Celtics could make in order to fix that. One rumor that's been going on recently is a Gordon Hayward for Miles Turner swap. This way, the Indiana Pacers can transition Sabonis into a full-time center, and they also get another forward. And this also fixes the Celtics' problem of not having a big. So while a straight-up one-for-one swap would make a bit of sense, based on how Hayward's played, I think the Celtics would also need to put in some more assets. And I also have a crazy trade idea that I think might work that I'm going to dissect in a moment, that would allow the Celtics to also fix their depth issue and give the Pacers the opportunity to blow it up and reset their team so they can become true contenders. Because based off the players they have right now and the assets they have right now, they are not going to be contenders soon. They have a bunch of really good players, but not star players, which is going to need to become legitimate contenders and a championship team. So I think the Pacers should blow it up, and I might make a video on that. But this trade is going to allow them to get a lot of picks, a decent young player, as well as Gordon Hayward, who can play on the team for a year. And then he'll be an expiring deal, or they could trade him at the trade deadline. Or if they want to let him become a free agent, they could either re-sign him for a much cheaper deal, like around $10 million, or they could sign and trade him for more assets. So without further ado, let's look at the trade. So, yeah, here's the trade. So the Indiana Pacers give up T.J. Warren and Miles Turner for Gordon Hayward, Carson Edwards, the Brooklyn second-round pick this year, and the Celtics second-round picks for the next 2 years. The Celtics also give up their pick this year, the Milwaukee pick this year, as well as a 2022 lottery-protected first-round pick. So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. First, I'll talk about what the Celtics are giving up and why they would give up those assets for the players they're getting in return. So, first, the reason they would give up Gordon Hayward because he doesn't really fit in well with the team. Also, you are getting a replacement for him in T.J. Warren, who isn't that good of a defender, but Gordon Hayward wasn't that great of a defender himself. Gordon Hayward was better than T.J. Warren, but he wasn't like an elite defender. And yeah, T.J. Warren's lack of defense isn't going to matter for a few reasons. First, like when they need defense, they have 3 really good wing defenders already in Tatum, Smart, and Brown. Also, there is going to be another move that I will be talking about in this video that I think they should make in order to add more wing defense. But already they're a really good wing defensive team, and T.J. Warren would just give them a more consistent option. And so right now they have 3 20-point game scorers, and Gordon Hayward can sometimes be that, but T.J. Warren is going to be that on a more consistent basis and is probably going to be one of the best 4th scoring options in the NBA. On top of Gordon Hayward, the Celtics are giving up 7 more assets, and I'm going to explain that. So, as far as giving up Carson Edwards, all he was really going to be for the Celtics is a backup point guard at best, and he isn't really getting used right now because this is a contending team, and a project player like Edwards isn't going to get many minutes on a team like that. So that's why I think the Celtics should trade Carson Edwards. Also, while they do need a backup point guard, Smart can run some backup point guard minutes. And there's another point guard that I have in mind that I will talk about later in this video that is going to be better than Edwards and is a nice veteran that will help the Celtics out right now. I also have them giving up 3 second-round picks. So while the second-round picks could be worth something, the Celtics don't really need them, and it does help the deal a bit, and the players they're getting in return are worth giving up those second-round picks. So plus 3 first-round picks. So while Indiana could snag some really good young players with these picks, the Celtics right now don't need young players. They need good, proven players to help them take the next step into that contending level. So now let's talk about the Indiana Pacers side of things. So obviously, you guys know why they should give up Miles Turner. If for some reason you don't, basically the reason why the Pacers have to give up Miles Turner is Sabonis is better than him, and Miles Turner and Sabonis can't coexist. And having Turner off the bench is just a waste of his talent. While they can get, so they should trade him while they can still get some value for him before his value depletes, as he's because he's not going to regress as a backup center. And so, yeah, so that's why the Pacers should give up Miles Turner. Now, as for TJ Warren, I think they should give him up so they could start a rebuild. They only gave up a second-round pick for him, and they're getting back a ton of value for him in this trade. So that allows them to start a reset with a ton of asset. Out of this trade, they'll get a nice veteran in Gordon Hayward, who they could trade at the trade deadline to a contender for some picks, just like Marcus Morris was traded last year by the New York Knicks to the Clippers for a first-round pick. I think the Pacers could do something very similar with him, or they could keep him for the entire year, and then he'll enter free agency, where they can either re-sign him to a deal worth about $10 million and just have him as a nice veteran on the team to help the young players grow, or they could sign and trade him to a contender for some young players or picks. Whatever they do with Gordon Hayward, they're still going to get value out of him, because even though his contract is worth $34 million, it is an expiring deal, so they only have to worry about that for one season, and that's not really going to affect them because there aren't that many crazy free agents that would want to come to Indiana. They also get a nice young guard that they can progress, and they get 2 first-round picks this season. And recently, they've been very good at drafting, as they've gotten a ton of steals. So they could either get some role players with those picks, or they might even be able to get some starters with those picks. And they also get a late second-round pick this season, which isn't going to be much, but they still might be able to get a decent bench player with that pick. Then they also get a second-round pick for next year and the year after, with which they could get some decent young players, just like same situation as the second-round pick for this season. And the final asset is a 2022 lottery-protected pick. So if the Celtics are somehow bad at that time, then the pick would go back to the Celtics, and they'd get the 2023 pick from the Celtics. And if the Celtics are bad, they'll get a pretty good pick for that 2023 pick. Or if the Celtics are good, which is more likely, they get another good pick, which they could add to this already good roster. But the main part of this deal is they can blow it up. So they get like a ton of assets, and they can do like what the Thunder have been doing or what the Pelicans are doing, where they trade their star players, or in the case of the Pacers, like their borderline star players, in Victor Oladipo, who's been in a lot of trade rumors, for some assets, and they just capitalize on all of these guys before their value dips even more. T.J. Warren isn't going to get that much better, and right now this Pacers team is definitely not a contender, and they're not in a position to become a contender immediately. So Sabonis is young, so he's pretty much the only player I'd say should be safe on this Pacers team, because he's young and he's still going to get better. And I don't know what they're going to do with Brogdon. They could trade him, but he's also fairly young, so I think they're probably going to keep him. And I think they should trade Victor Oladipo, blow it up, and just start a rebuild. And this trade would be a good way to do that. So let's take a look at the Celtics core before we move on to the next move. So they have 6 core players at this point in Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, T.J. Warren, and Miles Turner. So there are 2 different lineups they could do. They could have Smart at the 2 and Brown at the 3 with T.J. Warren coming off the bench, or Brown at the 2, T.J. Warren at the 3, and Smart coming off the bench. So I personally think that they would do the Smart off the bench thing because he knows how to come off the bench. He's fine with it, and he can still be very impactful as a 6th man. So let's get on to the next move. So after all that, the Celtics still have 6 major assets that I think could be put into another trade. They have the 14th overall pick, Daniel Tice, Enes Kanter, Romeo Langford, Robert Williams, and Grant Williams. So, right off the bat, I don't think Daniel Tice is going to get traded. I think he can stay as a backup center or power forward. So right off the bat, I'm taking Daniel Tice out of that group. I'm also going to take out Grant Williams because he was very valuable defensively for the Celtics, and he did a really nice job with all his versatility during the playoffs. So I would also think that the Celtics should keep Grant Williams. So that leaves us with the 14th pick, Enes Kanter, Romeo Langford, and Robert Williams. So they could do a ton of things. But I think what they should do is trade up to number 9 to take Onyeka Okongwu. And some draft experts might not think that Onyeka Okongwu is actually falling to 9. But let's take a look at the order. So the top 3 picks as of now are the Timberwolves, Warriors, and Hornets. And even if there is a trade, for the most part, we all know who's going in the top 3. It is LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, and James Wiseman. Some people do think that Onyeka Okongwu could go above Wiseman, but I don't think it's going to happen because Wiseman's upside is just so much higher than Onyeka Okongwu's. Okay, so let's move on to the 4th pick. So the 4th pick, the Chicago Bulls are not taking Onyeka Okongwu. They are probably going to take a small forward. And there are 2 major ones that could go that high, and those are Denny Avdija and Isaac Okoro. So with the 5th pick, the Cleveland Cavaliers are probably the biggest threat to take Onyeka Okongwu, but they are paying Andre Drummond a lot of money. Also, he seems pretty content there, and I think they'd at least give him a chance before drafting his replacement. So, because of that, I have them taking either Denny Avdija or Isaac Okoro, whoever falls to 5. So let's move on to the 6th pick. The Hawks are not taking a center. They just traded for Clint Capella, so they don't need another center, especially not one that just plays defense, gets rebounds, and plays on the inside. That's basically what Clint Capella does. So, they don't need Onyeka Okongwu. Let's move on to the 7th pick. The Detroit Pistons, while they could take Okongwu, they're probably taking a guard like Killian Hayes or Cole Anthony, and it's most likely going to be Killian Hayes. So let's go on to the 8th pick. The New York Knicks are not taking Okongwu. Mitchell Robinson is probably the brightest player on their roster, and he plays the center position. So there's no reason for them to take Okongwu. So then we make our way to the 9th overall pick. And yeah, so I think the Celtics should trade for the 9th overall pick and draft Onyeka Okongwu. And in this trade, I think the Celtics would give up, obviously, the 14th overall pick, which the Wizards could use to take Precious Achiuwa or Patrick Williams or Devin Vassell, whoever was there at pick 14. And I think the Celtics also give up Romeo Langford, who was nice defensively this season and still has some potential, even though he had some injury issues in the past few years. And on top of that, I think they also give up Robert Williams, who isn't as good as Okongwu and isn't as versatile as him, but is still a good inside defender that is young and has a lot of potential at the center position. The final thing I think the Celtics should do is bring back Isaiah Thomas on either a mid-level exception or a minimum contract, whatever he wants, because he's shown a ton of interest in returning to either the Celtics or going to the Golden State Warriors. I think the Celtics can't pass up on this opportunity because they don't have to give up any assets to do it, and this also would bring the fan interest up by a lot because everyone in Boston loves Isaiah Thomas. And yeah, so this would also give us a much better backup point guard than Brad Wanamaker, and I think Isaiah Thomas would become a really good backup point guard in Brad Stevens' system once again, because what helped him thrive the first time is being surrounded by a bunch of really good defenders, and he will be surrounded by that in Boston. Even if it's with him coming off the bench, he'll still be a very good player in my eyes, and I think the Celtics can't pass up on this opportunity. So, yeah, that's the last move. So let's quickly look over what the Celtics roster would look like after all of these moves. So, after all of those moves, these 10 players would be the 10 players in the Celtics rotation. They would have a starting 5 of Kemba Walker, Jaylen Brown, TJ Warren, Jason Tatum, and Miles Turner, with Marcus Smart as their 6th man and the rest of their rotation players off the bench being Isaiah Thomas, Onyeka Okongwu, Grant Williams, and Daniel Tice. These guys have a great mix of defense as well as shot creating, shooting, scoring, playmaking, pretty much everything. And I think this group could win the 2021 NBA championship if these moves were to take place. And yeah, I think this is definitely what the Celtics should do. On top of this, they could add some more veteran presence by signing Tristan Thompson to a minimum contract. And also, if Enes Kanter opts into his player option, he could also be a good veteran off the bench. Overall, I think this Celtics team would be extremely good and take that next step to become a legitimate championship team. Anyways, that's it for the video. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to like and comment down below what you think I should do for my next video. Anyways, so that's it. So, bye.